The collision course Nico Walsh adjusted his vintage glasses as he hunched over his sketchbook, trying to capture the particular way sunlight streamed through the windows of Moondrop Cafe. The Seattle rain had finally given way to an unexpected patch of sunshine, and the cafe buzzed with the energy of people emerging from hibernation. "Is this seat taken?" a melodic voice asked. Nico looked up to find a woman with vibrant indigo hair gesturing to the empty chair across from him. She wore an elaborate jacket with geometric patterns that somehow managed to look both avant-garde and perfectly natural on her slender frame. "All yours," he replied, hastily moving his scattered pencils. "Sorry about the mess. Creative chaos. I respect it." She set down her latte, adorned with intricate foam art. "I'm Zara Novak, by the way." Nico Walsh. "What are you working on?" she asked, tilting her head to glimpse his sketchbook. Nico hesitated. His illustrations for an upcoming sci-fi webcomic weren't exactly mainstream. Just some character concepts. Nothing special. "Let me see," Zara insisted, her curiosity seemingly genuine. He turned his sketchbook toward her. The page featured a detailed drawing of an otherworldly being with crystalline features emerging from a tear in reality. Zara's eyes, Dadan's eyes, widened with delight. "This is incredible. The dimensional perspective, the anatomical precision, you've even got the light refraction through the crystal structures." Her fingers hovered over the page, tracing the lines without touching them. "Understand what I was going for?" "Of course. I'm a concept artist for Quantum Horizon games." She smiled, revealing a small gap between her front teeth that Nico immediately found endearing. "We're always looking for fresh talent, actually." Nico blinked in surprise. Quantum Horizon was an indie studio known for their visually stunning narrative games. "You're joking. Never about art." She pulled out a business card with an iridescent logo. "Send me your portfolio. Seriously." The conversation flowed effortlessly from there. Zara's passion was palpable as she discussed color theory and narrative design, gesturing expressively with her hands. Nico found himself matching her enthusiasm, sharing ideas he'd normally keep to himself. "Wait," Zara paused, mid-conversation. "Don't move." Without warning, she reached across the table and gently removed Nico's glasses. He froze, suddenly aware of how close her face was to his. "Your eyes," she murmured. "They're heterochromatic. One blue, one hazel with gold flecks. Why hide them behind those frames?" Nico felt heat rise to his cheeks. "Most people don't notice. Or care." "I notice everything," Zara replied, carefully placing his glasses back on his nose. "Especially beautiful anomalies." Their coffee dates stretched into hours. They discovered shared obsessions with obscure animated films and a mutual appreciation for discontinued cereal brands. When Zara mentioned her collection of vintage science fiction paperbacks, Nico nearly knocked over his third cup of coffee in excitement. "I should probably let you get back to your sketching," Zara finally said, glancing at her watch. "Actually," Nico ventured, surprising himself with his boldness, "there's an exhibition of experimental animation at the Neptune Gallery tonight. Would you want to go with me?" Zara's smile brightened the already sunny cafe. "I'd love that." So they exchanged numbers, their fingers brushed, sending an electric current up Nico's arm. There was something magnetic about Zara, her confidence, her quirky brilliance, the way she seemed to see the world through a kaleidoscope lens. Later that night, as they stood in the glow of animated projections, Nico watched Zara's face illuminate with changing colors. She caught him staring and winked. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That meeting you was either complete coincidence or perfect cosmic timing." Zara laughed. "In my experience, there's no such thing as coincidence. Just chaos with patterns we haven't recognized yet." Nico smiled. "A chaos theory of hearts?" "Exactly." She slipped her hand into his. "And I'm very curious to see what pattern we make." Drawn together over the next few weeks, Nico and Zara's relationship evolved through a series of unconventional dates. They explored hidden art installations beneath city bridges, attended midnight screenings of cult animated films, and spent hours in obscure bookshops reading passages to each other from forgotten novels. Zara remained an enigma, too, a brilliant and unpredictable. She would disappear for days, consumed by work at Quantum Horizon, then reappear at his apartment. At 2 a.m., with takeout and wild stories about game, development crises. You should see that team when we're approaching deadline, she told him one evening as they sat on his fire escape, sharing dumplings under the stars. Creative chaos in its purest form. I can only imagine, Nico replied, watching how the moonlight caught in her indigo hair. You wouldn't have to imagine if you'd send me your portfolio like I asked, she nudged, stealing the last dumpling. It's been 3 weeks, Nico. The truth was, Nico had been procrastinating. His work had never been seen by anyone in the industry, and the idea of Zara brilliant. Confident Zara, judging it, terrified him. I'm refining a few pieces, he lied. Zara fixed him with a penetrating stare. You're scared? What? No, you are, she said softly, setting down her chopsticks. She moved closer, her thigh pressing against his. Which is ridiculous because you're wildly talented. Nico swallowed hard, distracted by her proximity. You've seen one sketch? It was enough. Zara's hand found his, her fingers tracing circles on his palm. I understand creative fear, Nico, but sometimes you need to let your art breathe in the world. Later that night, after Zara had fallen asleep in his bed, Nico sat at his desk staring at his collection of illustrations. In the soft glow of his desk lamp, he finally compiled his portfolio and, before he could second-guess himself, sent it to Zara's professional email. The next morning, he woke to find Zara, already gonna common occurrence, but a note on his pillow read, Meeting emergency. Check your email, Z. His portfolio had been forwarded to Quantum Horizon's creative director with Zara's enthusiastic recommendation. By noon, he had an interview scheduled for the following week. When Zara returned that evening, Nico lifted her off her feet in a spinning hug. I take it you saw the email? She laughed, her arms wrapped around his. Neck, you're incredible, he whispered. Against her hair? I know, she replied with a grin, before pulling him into a kiss that left him breathless. Their professional lives began. Intertwining with their personal relationship, Nico started freelancing for Quantum Horizon, and soon they were collaborating on character designs for a new game. Working together revealed new dimensions to their connection and new tensions. The silhouette is too conventional, Zara argued during one late-night design session in her loft apartment. We need something more distinctive. But players need to connect with this character emotionally, Nico countered, frustrated by her dismissal of his design. Form needs to follow function. Function can be beautiful and bizarre, she insisted, pacing around her cluttered living space. That's our studio's whole aesthetic. Their creative differences simmered beneath the surface of their growing intimacy. Nico was methodical, considering the practical implementation of every artistic choice. Zara worked in explosive bursts of inspiration, following intuitive leaps that sometimes defied explanation. Yet these differences created an exhilarating dynamic between them. After heated design debates, they often found themselves tangled in her sheets, the creative tension transforming into passionate connection. One night, as they lay together watching the city lights through her massive windows, Zara propped herself up on her elbow and studied his face. What? Nico asked, suddenly self-conscious. I'm memorizing you, she said simply. For my next character design, he laughed. I'm not exactly hero material. No, she agreed, tracing the line of his jaw. You're more interesting than that. You're the character who seems ordinary, but harbors extraordinary talent. The one readers underestimate. Her words warmed him from within. And what character are you? Something flickered in her eyes' vulnerability, perhaps before her usual confidence returned. I'm the wild card, obviously. The one who doesn't fit neatly into any character archetype. The beautiful chaos element, Nico murmured, pulling her closer. Exactly. She whispered against his lips. What Nico didn't yet understand was just how apt that description would prove to be. The beautiful disaster, the launch party for Quantum Horizon's newest game. Demo buzzed with industry insiders and gaming journalists. Nico tugged uncomfortably at his collar, feeling out of place despite having contributed significant artwork to the project. This world of networking and public relations was Zara's domain, not his. She seemed to be everywhere at once, charming investors, explaining technical details to journalists, laughing with colleagues. In her element, Zara radiated a magnetic energy that both captivated and intimidated him. She wore an avant-garde dress with sharp angles and bold colors that made her stand out even in the crowded venue. "There you are," she exclaimed, finally finding him hiding near the concept art display. "Marcus Collins from Polygon wants to interview us about the character design process." Nico felt panic rise in his chest. "Both of us?" "Zara, I'm not good with 'you'll be fine,'" she insisted, already pulling him toward a waiting journalist. "Just talk about your art like you talk to me." The interview began smoothly enough, with Zara handling most of the questions. But when the journalist asked specifically about the game's villain, a crystalline entity that had been primarily Nico's creation, he found himself unexpectedly in the spotlight. "The antagonist has a distinctly unique aesthetic," the journalist noted. "What inspired this design?" Before Nico could respond, Zara jumped in. "It was actually inspired by obscure mineralogy concepts. I wanted to explore how light refraction could create both beauty and menace." Nico froze. The villain had been entirely his concept, developed from sketches he'd shown Zara on the day they met. She had praised his originality, encouraged him to develop it further. Now she was claiming it as her own inspiration. "Actually," Nico interjected, his voice quieter than intended, "the crystal entity was my design concept." An awkward silence fell. The journalist looked between them, sensing tension. "Well, it was collaborative," Zara amended smoothly. "Nico executed the final design brilliantly based on our team's direction," the interview continued. But Nico felt a cold distance growing between them. When the journalist finally left, he turned to Zara. "What was that about?" "What?" she asked, sipping champagne with apparent nonchalance. "You know what? You took credit for my design." Zara rolled her eyes. "Don't be so sensitive. This is how the industry works. We present a unified creative vision. By erasing individual contributions, by understanding that no idea exists in isolation." Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby guests. "Your concept evolved because of our team environment, because of my feedback and guidance." "Guidance doesn't equal authorship," Nico insisted, his usually quiet demeanor giving way to genuine anger. Zara's expression hardened. "Look, I got you this opportunity. I put my reputation on the line recommending you. A little gratitude wouldn't kill you." The words stung like a slap. "So I should be grateful enough to let you claim my work?" "You're being dramatic," she dismissed, glancing around the room. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "When is the place?" "When you've claimed everything I create as collaborative." Something dangerous flashed in Zara's eyes. "You want individual recognition? Fine. See how far you get in this industry as a lone wolf with no connections." The threat hung between them. Around them, the party continued, oblivious to their escalating tension. Nico felt his chest tighten with disappointment and betrayal. "You know what?" he said quietly. "You remind me of the villain we created, beautiful on the surface but ultimately hollow, refracting others' light to appear brilliant." Zara's face transformed with shock, then fury. For a moment, she stood perfectly stilled. Then with a sudden movement, she appended the entire refreshment table beside them. Glasses shattered, food scattered, and conversations halted as everyone turned to stare. In the stunning silence that followed, Zara didn't storm out, as Nico expected. Instead, she laughed a sharp, startling sound that gradually softened into something genuine and self-aware. "Well," she said, looking at the chaos she'd created, "I guess that proves your point. Patterns in chaos. 3 weeks pass without contact between Nico and Zara." The dramatic scene at the launch party had become industry gossip, with exaggerated versions circulating through studio breakrooms and design forums. Nico threw himself into freelance work, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in his chest. On a particularly gloomy Tuesday, he sat in Moondrop Cafe, the place where they'd first met, staring at his untouched coffee. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd come hoping the familiar environment might spark his creativity, but instead found himself sketching Zara's face over and over. "Your coffee's getting cold," a familiar voice observed. Nico looked up to find Zara standing beside his table. Her indigo hair now cut into a short, angular bob. She wore simple jeans and a black sweater, the most understated outfit he'd ever seen her in. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. He nodded, closing his sketchbook quickly. "I owe you an apology," Zara said without preamble. "Several, actually." Nico studied her face, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "You look tired. I haven't been sleeping well." She fidgeted with a napkin, folding it into increasingly complex shapes, a nervous habit he'd never seen from her before. Turns out creative chaos is less fun when you're experiencing it internally. "What happened at Quantum Horizon?" "I heard rumors." Zara grimaced. "I took a leave of absence. After our disagreement, I realized some things needed to change." She met his gaze directly. "Including me. That's unexpected. My therapist says I have a pattern of building my identity around my creative achievements," she continued, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Taking credit for collaborative work, dramatizing situations for attention, it all stems from insecurity." Nico remained silent, processing her words. "The truth is," Zara continued, "I was intimidated by your talent from the moment I saw your sketches. I've always had to fight for recognition in this industry, and then you appeared with this raw, untrained brilliance." She looked down at her hands. "So I did what I always do, tried to make it part of my narrative." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserved better," she said simply. "And because I miss you. Not just romantically, I miss your perspective, your quietness. The way you see things, I don't." The sincerity in her voice resonated with something in Nico. Despite everything, he had missed her to her energy, her wild ideas, even her unpredictability. "I'm working on a new project," he found himself saying. "Independent. A graphic novel based on that crystal entity concept." Interest sparked in her eyes. "Really? That's fantastic." "The protagonist is different now. Less conventionally heroic. More ... complex." A small smile curved Zara's lips. "Inspired by anyone I know?" "Maybe." Nico hesitated, then opened his sketchbook to reveal a character with a striking resemblance to Zerobet, reimagined as a reformed antagonist, seeking redemption. Her fingers hovered over the page. "You've made me beautiful." "You are beautiful," Nico said quietly, "chaos and all." That evening, they walked through the city in the rain, talking for hours. Zara explained how the incident had forced her to confront patterns she'd been repeating throughout her career. Nico shared his own insecurities about succeeding in an industry that often valued networking over raw talent. At the doorway to her apartment building, Zara paused. "I'm not fixed, you know. I'm still working through things." "I never wanted you fixed," Nico replied. "Just honest." She reached for his hand, her fingers cold from the rain. "Would you like to come up?" "Just to talk," she added quickly. "I want to hear more about your graphic novel." Upstairs, her usually chaotic apartment had been tidied. Sketches were organized in portfolios, books arranged on shelves. Even her workspace showed signs of new discipline. "My therapist suggested external order might help with internal chaos," she explained, noticing his surprise. "It's a work in progress." They talked until sunrise, sharing ideas and rebuilding trust. When Nico finally fell asleep on her couch, Zara covered him with a blanket and watched him for a moment before retreating to her own room, giving them both the space they needed to find their way back to each other. Art from Fragment. 6 months later, the Seattle Independent Comics Expo buzzed with activity as creators and fans mingled among colorful booths. At a small table near the center, Nico and Zara sat side by side, surrounded by copies of Refraction, A Crystal Chronicle, their collaborative graphic novel. "I still can't believe the turnout," Nico murmured as another group approached their booth. Zara squeezed his hand under the table. "Believe it. Your art deserves recognition." The cover displayed both their names equally. Story and art by Nico Walsh and Zara Novak. This equal billing hadn't come easily. It had required countless conversations about boundaries, credit, and collaboration. They had established clear roles. Nico handled character design and illustrations, while Zara focused on world building and narrative structure. Their romantic relationship had evolved alongside their professional one, moving forward cautiously but deliberately. Zara's therapy continued, helping her recognize when her flair for drama crossed into problematic territory. Nico had worked on asserting himself, learning to stand firm when his contributions deserved acknowledgement. "Excuse me?" A young woman approached their table, clutching a copy of their book. "The way you depicted the relationship between the crystal entity and the explorer is incredibly moving. Was that based on real experiences?" Nico and Zara exchanged a knowing glance. "Art often reflects life," Zara replied, her characteristic confidence now tempered with humility. "Sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when different energies collide." After the fan departed, Nico leaned closer to Zara. "Different energies colliding, is that what we're calling it now? Would you prefer chaos theory of hearts?" she teased, referencing their first date. "Actually, I would," he smiled, remembering how far they'd come. Their booth continued drawing visitors throughout the day. Several indie publishers expressed interest in their next project, and a small game studio inquired about adaptation rights. By closing time, they had sold nearly all their stock. As they packed up their remaining materials, Zara pulled out a small gift box. "What's this?" Nico asked. "Open it." Inside, he found a crystal paperweight that caught the light, refracting it into patterns across the table. Embedded within the crystal was a miniature recreation of the first sketch he'd shown her at Moondrop Caf. "How did you?" "I commissioned it from a glass artist," Zara explained. "I wanted something to commemorate where we started and how we've transformed it into something better." Later that night, they celebrated with champagne on the rooftop of Nico's apartment building. The Seattle skyline sparkled around them, mirroring the stars above. "I've been thinking," Zara said, leaning against the railing. "About our next project? Already? We just finished this one. Creative minds never rest," she grinned. "But this is different. I was approached about an artist residency program in Japan. 3 months focusing on experimental narrative techniques, combining traditional art with digital media." Nico's heart sank. "That sounds perfect for you." "For us," she corrected. "It's a partnership opportunity. They specifically mentioned our work on refraction as exactly the kind of collaborative process they want to support us." "Together in Japan? If you want," her expression grew serious. "I know it's a big step. We'd be working together, living together, experiencing everything together. It could be amazing or ... double quotes, she hesitated, ... complete chaos." The old Nico might have hesitated, weighing every potential complication. But he had changed too, learning to embrace uncertainty through his relationship with Zara. "Chaos with patterns we haven't recognized yet." He quoted her words from their first date, pulling her closer. "Exactly," she whispered, her lips finding his as fireworks unexpectedly bloomed over the harbor. Perfect. Coincidence of timing that made them both laugh. In that moment, surrounded by light and color against the night sky. Nico understood that their story wasn't about taming chaos or finding perfect order. It was about creating something beautiful from the collision of different forces in art and in love. As Zara nestled against him, pointing out patterns in the fireworks display, he silently sketched new ideas in his mind. Characters evolving, worlds expanding. And to artists, finding their way together through the beautiful disaster of creation.